I joined with a couple of old timers. Old timers were guys that studied with Ron's back in the 50s. And I got in a love, sex, and marriage seminar because I've been trying to get a date with a beautiful gal, for 25 years and hadn't really succeeded. And these two old timers put on this seminar. I was invited by a gal who was the hostess at Continental Airlines VIP room. I met her when I was putting bags on the airplane part-time when I was going to college. And I thought, whoa, classy chick, and ended up going over to the apartment and we talked, right? Unbeknownst to me, had studied with Ron. She was a Hubbard certified auditor, right? And she invited me to this love, sex, and marriage seminar. Turns out it was being put on by her boyfriend, which I went, oh no, boom. But that was the introduction. And the experience was just magical beyond belief. It was like a gestalt. I just felt fabulous. And I even related that I haven't had an experience after that, processing myself on the technique and ending up in my mother's womb, which I didn't believe was possible. I was a scientist, and I was actually, for a short period of time, able to hear people think. And this was I went, what the heck is this stuff? So that's what led me in. And then I thought I went into the academy. I studied with the old timers. I liked them a lot better than the organization, to tell you the truth, right? Because the organization had this structure, and that structure impinged on me after very long. I was one of the best students they had ever had. They call it statistics. I had the highest statistics. And yet this ethics officer was coming at me because I was having a relationship with a student who I had fallen in love with. Because after the Love, Sex, and Marriage seminar, beautiful women were willing to go out with me. So I was going, whoa, this is great. But he totally misapplied ethics. Ethics was supposed to be the original definition was reason and the contemplation of optimum survival. You're supposed to contemplate how to pull it off. Well, this guy was just scared the crap out of you. It was like he's trying to structure you in, trying to invite you into, you have sinned, and you can't do this, which was directly contradictory to the idea of being free to be able to do anything. But I love the technology. Hubbard was a brilliant. He was a genius. And, he was an old science fiction writer. And I got into the subject reading Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein, and that was his, they were roommates at one point. So I literally bought everything that there was. And I kept having magical experience after magical experience while getting at different times attacked by the church. But I didn't really get attacked. I went through all the courses. I had incredible experiences. I went to England and did the briefing course, what he called the briefing course in Sussex. Had amazing experiences, amazing spiritual experiences. And one time I could see spiritually in all directions at the same time, incredible, and I was a Disney Imagineer, who was always offered in a fantasy. I never liked reality that much, So this was wonderful. But that was back in 1965, 66, 67. I was in England for the whole year and did everything Hubbard, every course, every level. That was probably the most magical year. So I went out to apply this stuff. And people would come to me. We'd have a fabulous time, and then I started getting attacked by the organization, like you are not doing it correctly. You are, all of this. So we started to get into the war games with the organization, and I would learn how to handle those so I could slip out of them. Actually, strangely enough, using Ron's technology, I could handle the suppression that was coming down from the organization. But even Ron said this would probably happen. He said, organizations tend to be suppressive to the individual. And from my viewpoint, they fell into an organized religion trap. And to me, organized religion has 3 lines of promotion. 1, there's something wrong with you. I was born Catholic. You were born with original sin. The second line of promotion is you better get this handle or else. The Catholics go to hell and burn for eternity. The Mormons don't get to be with their loved ones, which might even be worse than burning up in hell. And the third line of promotion is we're the only ones that got the answer, right? So if they could get people to buy into that idea that they can be totally free, that they can have these incredible spiritual experiences, that they can have whatever they want in life, and they buy into it, and they believe that's the only technology that's going to get them, and they're easy to manipulate because they can be afraid to not be able to get the technology, so they could cause them to toe the line. It's much in the same way, that, from my viewpoint, that the bankers of the New World Order run the world. They want you to be afraid. The news is down, right? And when you're afraid, you're easy to control, and they can take away your freedoms gradually and little, and same type of situation. But I kept studying the technology. At one point, I was thrown out, what they call suppressive, what Catholics would call excommunicated from the church. But that was because I refused to handle. For years, I would handle all of the attacks. I just got tired of it. There were people who were attacking me in the church. Now, there's wonderful people and horrible people and just about everything in between in the organization. But I was doing seminars and workshops, and people were getting more gain on the workshop than they were sometimes getting on levels that they were paying $20,000 for, right? In fact, I used to have people hide the success stories. I got more out of your seminar than I did out of all of it, because I was basically dramatizing their being free to do whatever they want. Well, there are some people in the organization that love this, but those that were in the structure, I was a threat. I was a threat to the financial system. I was how Hubbard put it. He put the cult of the personality must be knocked out. There were people that were doing that. Well, they had what they call a committee of evidence. If they considered you did something wrong, it was like their ethics court, right? You'd go in, you'd be ordered into this ethics court. Well, I handled them, one after the other after the other. But the incredible amount of work to handle these things and get the people on your side, sometimes I'd get them all to see the truth, and then they'd get all replaced by the senior. They'd put some other people in there. You start all over again, right? I finally got tired of that. And in the latest committee of evidence, Comm, they put me on, I said to them, I've got 2 Kakon statuses from Ron, which meant nobody's supposed to be able to touch you, right? I was an advanced auditor. I brought 20,000 people, got them excited about Scientology over the years, and brought them in. I got 20,000 hours of what they call well done, very well done auditing. I supervised all of Hubbard's courses to record statistics, and they're going to declare me a suppressive, which is the worst kind of person you could ever be. This is a horrible person who attacks people if they try to get better. You got to be kidding. I didn't think they were really going to do it. I gave them 3,800 success stories. And there were kids that obviously were under the orders of the hierarchy in the church, and I was declared. I was thrown out of the church. And as I said in one of the talks, I said I had nightmares for 2-3 years because close friends, who I'd known for years and years, just cut communication. They wouldn't have anything to do with you. Why? Well, because they bought into the idea this is the only path to their freedom. And if they were to communicate with me now, the church is going to cut off their freedom, right? I had a guy, real close friend, attended my seminars and went, God, those are some of the greatest things. That's what Scientology is supposed to be. It's all supposed to be fun and, a good time and you're getting better. He didn't communicate with me for 25 years, right? And then he finally came to the awareness. It took 25 years. This is bullshit. And he calls me up on the phone. He says, I owe you $250 from a seminar I attended 25 years ago. Invites me over for dinner, gives me the cash, right? And a lot of what we call old time, the really sane people or the really ones who were really able, I'm not going to take this crap, and walked out. But it was scary to walk out, from your friends and, and your loved ones and your belief that this was really valuable technology. And if you're going to walk out, you don't know if you're going to be able to get it anymore because they told you you're not going to get anything, So that's basically what happened. And after I got, if you want to call it, thrown out, I really didn't have connection with Scientology or Scientologists, except for close friends who also got out at the same time for 25 years. This is new, coming back in and being back in the subject. It started when that guy called me up after 25 years. It says, I owe you the money. Well, I met a whole bunch of people that were out in the field, right, who loved Hubbard's technology, but couldn't stand the suppression and domination and control in the church.
In those 25 years, were you still using the tech, or?
I used everything. Yes, I used Hubbard's tech. I used it a lot. Hubbard's tech is brilliant in a lot of areas. But I also studied with other people, right? I studied with the Seth materials, and I studied Abraham Hicks materials, which is the law of attraction. And I studied Bashar, the alien supposedly from this other planet, right? And it was beautiful material because I was attracted to amazing people. Like I said to this guy who's Bashar's channeling through Daryl Anka, I says, how do I know you're really an alien from another planet, Because I love the idea that he was, but I was also a scientist. I don't know, that guy. He didn't answer the question, but what he said was brilliant, really brilliant. He said, in your culture, you have a tradition of evaluating the source of the information rather than the value of the information itself. He said, it matters not if I am who I say I am. If the information serves you, use it, and if it doesn't, don't. So I gathered all kinds, in some ways, this ET civilization, if you will, left Hubbard for dead philosophically. It just expanded out. I wouldn't say that to this group, but it did. It's like it expanded. And I eventually learned to have, in my reality, telepathy. I could communicate with these people. Now, to me, the only proof of anything is experiencing it to be true. And I've been called a nut all my life, so you can believe it or not. But then I started going into communication with Hubbard after he died. And Hubbard went, there was some crazinesses, and there were parts of my ego that were nuts, when I was alive. And, the organization went into this suppressive insanity. And like he always said, in one of his lectures, he said, the freedom to leave the game must never be denied. But the church was denying it, right? So anyway, that's the answer.
How are you communicating with Hubbard?
Well, basically, if you believe this, right, the alien civilization, it started with actual channeling where Daryl Anka, you can go online and see, Daryl Anka or Bashar.com. Daryl was channeling Bashar, this alien. Bashar was using his body like he used a cellular telephone. And according to him, if you believe it, he said this is the most common method of communication among alien civilizations. They're all telepathic. They've evolved out of language. And he said, what we do is we tune to the signature vibration of a biological entity, right? And in tuning, it's like tuning to a radio station or tuning to a person, and then the information comes through. And that was coming through with Daryl. Daryl just handed over his body. He literally goes to sleep. He goes here, and this other voice comes through, and this other timbre and resonance, and right. Well, I developed the ability to do that. As it went on and on and on, I saw the simplicity of it. As a scientist, I checked out their technology from my viewpoint, and it left our technologies for dead because the physics was quite different. My doctorate paper, the doctorate paper I was working on was called Including Consciousness in Our General Theory of Physics. Well, their physics was all based on consciousness, like quantum physics, right? And Bashar would say, I'd ask him, like, how do you teleport your ships? Oh my God, he claims they could do it in space and time. Now I studied all that stuff. I was in astrophysics. I was at the Van Vleck Observatory when I was 14. I always wanted to be able to contact aliens, but I don't know about this, But I just took it at face value. He said that what they do, he says they don't travel. It's not traveling. These things are light years away, trillions and trillions of miles away. You can't travel. It'd take you forever, right? Even at the speed of light. He said what they do is they create an isolation field around their ship by broadcasting every known frequency in a spherical envelope. He says, then I think Chicago 1920, right? Roaring 20s. He said the computer takes that thought and causes the molecular structure of everything inside the sphere to vibrate at the carrier frequency of Chicago 1920, including the space itself. He said the isolation field is then removed, and by necessity, the ship must now take up residence in Chicago 1920. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of stuff I went into after Hubbard.
What did your scientist friends think of these theories?
It depends on how you approach it. If you approach it with a good communication, I learned, to me, Hubbard did the most brilliant job in how to communicate to people and how to get them to accept things, right? And if I tell the story in the right way, I'm not requiring any of them to believe it, like I'm telling you, I say, I was living with this gal, Norma Zamet, right? And she came home and she goes, John, I've been speaking to a man from another planet. I go, yeah? Have you really, Norma? With that sarcasm. She says, yeah, he's from Orion. I remember her telling this. I says, Norma, Orion is a constellation of stars named by astronomers, a group of stars. Theoretically, a person could be from a planet rotating around one of the stars that we call Orion. But the very fact that this guy tells you he's from Orion should make you dubious of his credibility. Beautiful male logic. Well, fortunately, Norma has this Goldie Hawn exuberance that refuses to be smothered by male logic. And she goes, it was great. She gives me a tape. I listened to the tape and I went, holy cripes. This guy, the love for every person was palatable. His communication cycle, his manners, his respect of the person in front of him was incredible. And his philosophical technology just cut through things to the fundamental basics. And you went, oh, and I go, I got to go see who this guy is. And that's how it started. And with regard to telling the other scientists, I tell them that story. I said, you don't have to believe nothing, right? Go see. If the information serves you, use it. If it doesn't, don't. I mean, that's it, yeah.
It kind of brings us back, and I ask these questions respectfully.
Absolutely.
It brings us back to what you were talking about earlier the day when you were talking about the importance of Hubbard's statement that what's true for you is true.
Yes, what's true for you is what you observe to be true for yourself. Yeah.
It seems to me that I understand. I mean, it sounds important. It sounds profound.
Right.
But it seems to ring a little hollow to me, and I'm wondering if you can help me understand why. Because it seems to me that if you say if it's true for you, it's true. Well, it may not be true, but if you believe it's true, then you accept it as true.
Well, you have to understand truth. Truth has a number of different meanings and connotations. There's what's true for the individual. He goes, I think you're a real SOB. Well, that's what's true for him at that given moment. It might not be true that the guy's an SOB. He might be a really nice guy, but this guy is seeing his version of him, right?
But science seems to be something different from belief. Science seems to be, okay, you You have to be able to, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Classic science totally divorces the person from the subject. Double-blind experiments. Get the person out of there. But quantum physics asked the question when it first started, if we do two identical experiments, have one guy watch them and the other one is not watched, are there any differences? And they discovered there was. That when a live person was watching it, it shifted. It was only minutely on subatomic levels, but there was an influence. So that the individual was literally affecting the reality. Right.
But in your seminar, you talk about communicating with ETs, and you walked us through the process of you connecting with this person, and essentially you said, if you believe you did it, you did it. Or you used the
I didn't say that.
what did you say?
I said,
I don't mean to.
No, by all means. Clarifying is all where it's at, right? I said, your imagination is the key. If you will allow the information to come through without invalidating it, whatever comes through, comes through. You don't have to believe it's a real alien. I just made it up. My mind projected it. It doesn't matter if you allow the information to come through. Now, if you practice this more and more and more, you follow the exercises, more information comes through. And there becomes a point where it becomes more real than the physical reality, more real than you're touching the walls. And the person has that experience, then they know it's true.
But your other exercise of thinking of a person in Paris and what they're seeing and smelling, if I think of Adolf Hitler staring at a woman who looks exactly like Marilyn Monroe, eating a plate of spaghetti while there's a cigar smoker next to her, I can imagine that, but it doesn't make it true.
It doesn't make it real. You mean it doesn't make it palatable. It isn't. Right. It isn't a reality that other people can see and other people can experience. It seems to be only in your own consciousness. Correct?
But I would say that Adolf Hitler is not staring at this.
Yeah, but here's the key. Here's the key. If you're taking your imagination, you are creating a scenario like you just wrote a story. Well, according to quantum physics, our thoughts are creating the reality that we are experiencing. That's where they're coming to. They're arriving at that point. Hubbard said that way back in 1950-51. That was metaphysics. Metaphysics was people who would have experiences that you couldn't repeat. You couldn't bring somebody else to that experience. You couldn't quantify it in a scientific way. Quantum physics is now coming to the realization that our thoughts are actually creating the reality and being able to demonstrate it. There's a guy in Japan that takes pictures of water, frozen water, that he has put the thought ugly, and the whole crystalline structure of the water changes. He puts another same water, purified water, out of a tap and calls it beautiful or I love you, and the whole crystalline structure changes.
Is there video of this?
There is video. There are books out on it.
Yeah, but is there somewhere I can look for it on YouTube?
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the book now, but I can get it for you. It's Pictures in Water. Just plug something like that in Google, and it'll start coming up. Right.
Could I ask you to step just one step
this way?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks. And again, all these questions are I ask respectful. I want to go back to the point you made of if you use this procedure more and more and more, essentially you'll develop this ability.
Right.
But is that what's really happening, or are you just believing more and more and more that you're able?
You have to define reality. What do you mean by reality, right? Are you seeing me right now?
Yes.
Is that real?
Yes.
Okay. So if in your mind or your spirit you see an image that is just as clear or clearer than you're seeing my body now, is that real?
I don't know that I've had that experience.
Yeah, if you did, would it be real?
I don't know that
Yeah.
I I could even imagine that.
I agree with you completely. Until you have the experience, it doesn't confirm it. I've had experiences. There's no way I can prove them to anybody else. Theoretically, I can guide them to have an experience, and then they go, whoa. But for a great period of time, they're subject to invalidating it. They go, this is just my imagination. This is not real, right? And now they're countering their own creation. See, we look at a picture that comes up on a television set or a picture that comes up on a computer screen. What is this? It is a programmed image that is being traced onto the screen or is exciting, three little dots. And it produces a reality based on the programming. Well, to me, I was brought up Catholic and all of that. To me, the only thing that really resonates with me was what Christ is supposed to have said, was he said, it is done unto you as you believe. That I heard. Now, I wasn't there when Christ said it. That's hearsay data, right? And when he was performing miracles, he supposedly said, these things ye shall do and greater things. And I went, oh, that's cool, man. That'd be neat. Well, if that premise, that is, it's done unto us as we believe, the belief system, the things we go, this is true, this is not, according to quantum physics, the universe is proving that we're right. That's the program. Our belief system is the program, and the quantum field is aligning with the program. Analogously, I screwed up that word, in the same way that a computer is responding to the programming that's been put in it, right? Those are the theories. But I go back to Hubbard's article on personal integrity. It's not true for you until you have experienced it to be true. And when you've experienced it to be true and somebody else hasn't, there ain't no way you're going to get them to believe it, because they're focused in what seems to be the only reality that exists.
How much money do you suppose you gave to the Church of Scientology in the time you were there?
I didn't give as much because I skirted around it. I did the training. I did the courses. I didn't do a lot of the processing. The processing in the church. Processing is extremely expensive. I learned how to do the processes and went with a friend, and we processed each other, and it was free, right? So for me, I probably spent, about maybe 40,000, 40 grand in the church, which is nothing compared to what a lot of other people were regged into.
What do you think about what's happening inside the Church of Scientology right now? We're seeing this mass exodus.
Well, what I think is that there are people that bought into the idea that they could be freer, they could have more of the life they wanted and less of the life they didn't want by following Hubbard's path. And they are finding they spent vast amounts of money, and some of them, not only are they not achieving the freedom that they were promised, their life is getting worse than it was. Now they're broke or they're in debt, and they're concerned about that. And will I be able to survive? And all of it. It's called betrayal. Betrayal. They're promised something, it isn't delivered, right? That's the destruction of all organizations. You don't deliver what you promise, that organization is going to crumble. Now, those people that are weak and afraid, you can keep them under control to a degree. But when people run out of money or they can't stand it anymore, they may go through a hell of a lot of mental anguish, and they do, thinking I'm going to be separated from my friends and I'm going to be, they're very pissed off, man. You told me I was going to get free. Tell you the truth, I'm worse off than I was before. That's betrayal, right? They weren't delivered what they were promised. That's the incredible simplicity of it. And there are people trying to manipulate that for whatever reasons and whatever purposes. It may be for money, it may be for power, it may be for control, it may be the ego, it may be I'm right and you're wrong, it's the this and the them, I'm the leader and you're the peons and we control the peons. Why? Because I want to, I like the feeling of power and I like the money that I make. Davis Miscavige lives like a king in a physical reality, but I wouldn't want to be him. That man's got to be mentally nuts, even in his own. It's like the poor guy is a mess, mentally, spiritually. He's not having a wonderful life, right? You look at the question, the simple question, why do people do things? Because they think it will get them what they want. And why are the people staying in the church? Because they think it will get them what they want. Why are the leaders controlling all these people? Because they think it will produce the reality that they want. It won't. It doesn't. You can't treat people like that because one of the basic absolute truths from my alien friend is that what you put out, you're going to get back. What you sow is what you're going to reap. You sow misery for other people, you're going to get that misery back in a lot of different forms. After I got out of church for a long time, I went, how do you get, for instance, the value of Hubbard's technology out to people when the church has now an absolutely horrid reputation? If Scientology, people back away, like they're being attacked by a cobra. And I don't blame them, right? Because they go, whoa, these are nutso people. How do you get out these technologies? And even the odd ones, channeling and this stuff from the alien, because the general public's not going to accept that. It's a small segment of people who are willing to take a look and see how do you get it? That's my big dream. And my big dream was you get it through entertainment and entertain people. I mean, really is a genuine motive. Entertain them. Use the entertainment to inspire them and then slip in the truths in the middle of the. So I spent 10 years designing a theme park that is exactly designed to do that. It's called Wonder World. It's billed as a living invitation to make life wonderful, coupled to all the know-how to pull it off. And you can discuss wisdom with dragons. Now, if you don't get the wisdom, at least you'll have fun. Right? All I need to do now is convince Disney to spend $9 billion to build a theme park. And we'll be out. Or anybody out there who wants to hear the game, accelerate our transition toward the kind of world we'd all like to have.